call the Finance Personnel Committee meeting on February 19th. Roll call, please. Joel, or whoever's doing it.
Yep. Zerbal is excused. Fluky?
Here.
Service?
Here.
Selk?
Here.
Jaden?
Here.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Action on the agenda. Motion to approve the agenda. If you need any changes.
Move to approve.
Second.
Second by Tom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Action on the minutes for the December 17th, 2024 Finance Personnel Committee meeting. Any changes or is an approval or motion is welcomed?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 6A discussion item. Consider, discuss, act on a recommendation for 2024 interfund transfers.
Okay, so the three items on the agenda today are all somewhat interrelated, and they're required under village policy to have ultimately the village board adopt and approve certain transfers from funds. So that's why you have these three very specific things, even though they're related. So it's more procedural, and it probably isn't going to take a whole lot of time. But the first one under 6A is talking about transferring funds, interfund transfers between what will ultimately be, what will ultimately end up having is funds being transferred from one account, Fund 465, which is land sales and acquisition, to Fund 470, which is the NFL draft. As part of the 2025 budget, we had incorporated in that budget that transfer. So we are going to basically liquidate the land sales and acquisitions fund, which Greg had put together a brief history in the packet for you. And that's roughly about $56,000, just shy of that. That fund hasn't been used for a number of years. In fact, I think it's remained unchanged since 2017. So again, we were looking at an opportunity to just kind of liquidate that fund and close it out. Most land acquisitions to date are being done and performed through the Community Development Authority, or the CDA. So that has its own fund and its own reserve available for those acquisitions. There's really not a need at this time to have that as a general fund component. The overall NFL draft has about $190,000 currently budgeted as an allocation. This will add to that $190,000 to get us some additional dollars to support some of the draft expenses that we anticipate. By and large, most of those expenses are going to be in the form of overtime costs for public safety services. With that being said, this transfer would go into that fund in the event that we don't spend it for NFL draft purposes. What would then be required is another effort would come back to the committee and then ultimately the board to then transfer it out of the NFL draft fund back to some other reserve account. In all likelihood, it would go towards a reserve retirement account or to a building maintenance fund account. In fact, just today, I think the Press Gazette talked about the possibility of Governor Evers including some dollars in the state budget that would go towards Ashwaubenon and Green Bay to support public safety again. They've said that once before, and it didn't really happen the way that they intended to about 2 years ago. So we're not holding our breath, and we're just making sure we have adequate funds to support our draft operations without having it be an impact to the overall budget and to the taxpayer.
Do we have a ballpark number as to what we're going to spend on the draft?
From a cost perspective, we have about estimated around $300,000 in expenses for staff wages, and that was the number that we actually submitted to the state. So our local legislator, Jamie Wall, who was just elected, had asked for those numbers. We had supplied that to him. It's our understanding he spoke with the governor's office and was incorporated in the budget. Obviously, it has to go through the budget process, so we're not sure where that's going to be at. So that $1 million would cover our $300,000, what the city of Green Bay is anticipating in some of Brown
I suppose the NFL is really gonna kick in a lot of money to you,
The NFL will kick in $0 to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no
Sorry.
contribution. So, yeah, there's no direct benefit to the village as it relates to the draft. It's all indirect, obviously, through dollars that people spend in our community.
Exposure.
Exposure, yep, exactly. Sales tax and room tax dollars is probably the closest we'll get to having any direct benefit from the draft. So in any event, again, procedurally, the board has to approve any interfund transfers. So this is just more of a procedural thing of closing out Fund 465, transferring funds to Fund 470 to the tune of $55,569.03.
So then the total we will have in the NFL draft fund will be like 290,000, we said, right? Because we have 150 or so in there right now.
Correct.
So about 200,000. How about Public Works, Joel? They're gonna have, I would imagine that they're gonna have a lot, or we have maybe some expenses already for Public Works.
There likely will be. So that's something that we're working through right now with the transportation plan with the NFL. And once we have that refined as far as what our true responsibility is going to be, as an example, most of the transportation related impacts, so the staffing that goes with that, is actually being performed by State Patrol. So State Patrol is providing the resources for traffic, not necessarily traffic control. That's being done through the local organizing committee, but the actual resource of having officers present, which in a typical Packer game day, it's not only our public safety staff that do that, but our public works staff does as well. Our public safety will not be doing traffic, nor will our public works staff. That'll be strictly State Patrol staff that will be doing that throughout the village and the city of Green Bay.
I'll make a motion to approve the transfer of $55,569 from the Fund 465 to Fund 470 and approve the transfer of all excess general fund dollars to Fund 470.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, 6B. Consider, discuss, act on a recommendation for a 2024 budget amendment.
So this is again somewhat procedural. So in 2024, we had anticipated a certain amount of retirements to occur in 2024. Based on those retirements, employees are generally given benefits that they have accrued over the period of their career. Some employees obviously accrue more the longer the duration that they're here. The predominant value of benefits that gets paid out to the retired employees is accrued sick leave. So if they've been here for longer than 10 years, they can get a portion of their sick leave paid out to them in the form of kind of a retirement trust, if you will, that can go towards medical premiums and things of that nature. In addition to that, and particularly with public safety staff, they are allowed to accrue up to 480 hours of compensatory time to which they can just sit on until they retire. And so that's a fairly large amount. And then oftentimes retired employees will accrue as much vacation as they can without using it before they retire, just get that banked amount paid out. So those retirements, again, we had a number of those in 2024. We had planned $126,000 of retirements. We had certainly more than that. What this would do is it takes funds out of our committed fund balance reserve for retirements and places it into the general fund to reflect the expenses that were made as a result of those retirements. When we have fund balance at the end of the fiscal year, and some of you may recall this, we will take that unapplied fund balance and put it into the reserve account to build it up so that in the event we have a heavy year of retirements, we can pull from that reserve and put it back into the general fund. And that's essentially what we're doing. We have more retirements, higher value of retirements than what we had anticipated, so we're going to pull it from that specific reserve account designated for retirements and put it back into the general fund to balance the books, if you will, before our audit is complete.
But there's enough funds in there to cover the 2025 retirement?
Yes, yep, exactly.
I know this is a procedural move. Have we ever looked at paying out the liability every year so it's not unfunded over a long period of time, but still giving the benefit? So if you take a sick day, pay out all of the sick days at the end of the calendar year. But if you have 10 days, then you get, at the end of your career, you can take 10 days off, you'll still be on health care, those type of things, but you don't actually get the pay.
Yeah,
And then
I
spread
can't.
up in a year.
Yeah, it's a great question. I can't speak to the history of it, but that is something that we are looking at presently. It's very similar to how we handle like operations and maintenance of vehicles. So we depreciate an asset over a period of time, so there's adequate money available. So when that asset comes due for replacement, the cash is on hand. Be very similar to that, where like you said, we would essentially cash out the balances that are due or that have been earned that year, place them into that reserve so that they're available come 10, 20 years from now that they come due. So we are looking at that. One of the challenges, and to some degree similar to asset replacement, you have wage inflation, obviously, so you're cashing out, let's say, or reserving cash on today's dollars, and in 10 years that amount might not be the same. So it's just a matter of making sure that that reserve is being invested properly to ensure that it's gaining some interest earnings to then be used towards that inflationary pressure. Yeah. So again, just this is anticipated based on those retirements. So just a motion to recommend. This will ultimately again go to village board. This does require a resolution, and so a resolution will be prepared for the village board meeting. But before we put the language together, we just wanted to get a recommendation from the committee first.
So I will motion to recommend the proposed 2024 budget amendment to the village board.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. 6C, consider discuss act on a recommendation to transfer restricted for retirement funds to unassigned fund balance.
So again, this is related to the last item. So with that amendment to the budget to increase general fund expenditures by $126,000, we have to amend the budget to reflect the increased general fund applied revenues of $126,000. So again, it just requires a budget amendment. So you're basically moving a revenue account from one fund to the other fund, thus requiring the amendment, and that's required under law. So this is again just a simple procedural thing. It just accomplishes the revenue side of what you just did on the expenditure side.
And this will have no impact, or it won't impact a general fund policy between 20 and 30 year. General fund balance will still stay between the 20 and 30% that we have.
Yeah. And again, this 126,000 is not coming from unrestricted fund balance. It's coming from the reserve retirement account, which was specifically set up to fund these types of transfers.
I'll move to approve and recommend to the village board the transfer of the $126,000 from restricted for retirement account to unassigned fund balance account to support the 2024 budget amendment and pay for the 2024 employee retirement payouts.
Wow.
I didn't
That's
hear
good.
Can you state that again? Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Greg, our finance director, sends his regards. He's on his way to Indianapolis to watch his son play basketball. It's his last basketball tournament, and I think he prefers to be at the basketball tournament than talking about this, but he gives his regards that you're able to take this up for him. So appreciate that.
Items for next agenda. Anybody have anything? Otherwise, you do or have something, please let staff know. I welcome a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you very much.